Hey everyone, grab a coffee, get comfortable, because today I need to share something that completely shattered the picture-perfect life I thought I was building. My name is Sarah, I'm 30, and I work as a project manager in tech, here in Detroit. Life felt good, especially because I was about to marry Mark, the kindest, most supportive man I'd ever known. We were planning our dream wedding, small but beautiful, exactly what we wanted. But underneath the surface, there was always this tension. My family, my mom Helen, my stepfather David, my stepbrother Paul and his wife Linda, they were complicated. I always felt like I had to try harder, achieve more, just to get the same nod of approval Paul got just for breathing. David, my stepdad, was always a bit distant, more focused on Paul, his biological son. Mom always tried to keep the peace, which usually meant keeping David and Paul happy, often at my expense. Little did I know, their version of keeping the peace was about to detonate my entire world on the one day that should have, been my happiest. I thought I knew what neglect felt like, but I had no idea how deep the betrayal could cut. Was I just the family ATM, the convenient daughter, easily discarded when I wasn't useful anymore? Stay with me, because the truth is, wilder than you can imagine. Wedding planning should be exciting, right? Choosing flowers, tasting cakes. For me, it highlighted the divide. Whenever I shared details, the responses were lukewarm. Mom would offer a tight smile, David would barely look up from his phone, and Paul and Linda, they seemed almost annoyed by my happiness. "Are you sure you want that venue, Sarah?" Linda once asked, wrinkling her nose. "It's a bit simple, isn't it?" Paul added, "Yeah, not really our style." My style, my wedding, but apparently their opinion mattered more. Mark noticed. "Are you okay, honey?" He'd ask gently after another awkward family dinner. "They seem preoccupied." I'd wave it off, making excuses. "They're just busy." Busy with what? I later found out they were secretly planning their own much-needed family getaway, a lavish trip to a lakeside resort upstate, overlapping perfectly with my wedding weekend. Looking back, the signs were there. David grumbling about new management shaking things up at the manufacturing plant where he worked, a massive corporation Mark was heavily involved with, though I kept Mark's exact high-level role vague. Mark had even casually mentioned knowing David's division director during one of our talks. Mom seemed unusually stressed, deflecting my questions about their plans for the wedding day itself. "Oh, we'll figure it out, dear," she'd say, avoiding my eyes. Did she know then? Did she know they planned to abandon me? The casual cruelty of it all, hidden behind vague answers and forced smiles, still makes my blood run cold. They were experts at making me feel small, even amidst my own joy. The day arrived, October 15th, crisp air, golden leaves, supposed to be perfect. My dress felt like a dream. My makeup was flawless, and Mark looked at me like I was the only person in the world. My friends were there, buzzing with excitement, helping with last-minute touches. But as the ceremony time approached, a knot tightened in my stomach. Where was my family? I texted Mom, "Starting soon, where are you guys?" No reply. I called David's phone. Straight to voicemail. Paul's phone? Off. Linda's? Ignored. Panic started to prickle under my skin. Maybe they got stuck in traffic? Maybe there was an emergency? My maid of honor, Jen, tried to reassure me. "They'll be here, Sarah. Don't worry." But the clock ticked past the start time. 15 minutes. 30 minutes. The guests were shifting uncomfortably. The officiant looked sympathetic. Mark squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with a mixture of love and growing anger on my behalf. He knew my family history, the subtle digs, the feeling of being second best. Finally, Jen came back from making another round of calls, her face pale. "Sarah, I can't reach any of them. Their phones are off or they're not answering." The truth hit me like a physical blow. They weren't late. They weren't coming. On the day I was supposed to feel most loved, most cherished, my own family had deliberately chosen to be absent. Tears threatened, but a cold, hard resolve started to form instead. I wouldn't let them ruin this. I looked at Mark, took a deep breath, and said, "Let's start." We walked down that aisle, just the two of us, towards our future, leaving behind the empty seats and the deafening silence of their betrayal. The reception was beautiful, despite the shadow hanging over it. Our friends rallied, showering us with love, trying to fill the void left by my family. Mark never left my side, his quiet strength a lifeline. But later that night, curled up on the hotel bed, exhausted but married, I couldn't resist checking my phone one last time. And there it was. A notification. Linda had tagged Paul in photos. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened the app. It wasn't just photos. It was an entire album titled Family Fun Getaway. There they were, Mom, David, Paul, Linda, grinning widely, clinking glasses by a sparkling lakeside at a fancy resort I recognized from brochures. Photos posted just hours ago, during my wedding ceremony. My breath hitched. Then I saw the captions. Paul's, finally, a stress-free weekend with the real family. Linda's, some priorities are just more important. Our family over everything. And the comment that shattered me, from David himself under a group picture, soaking up the good life while others deal with their choices. Choices? My choice was to build a life, to love, to commit. Their choice was to abandon me, mock me, and publicly humiliate me on my wedding day. It wasn't just absence. It was malicious. It was planned. The vague excuses, the averted eyes, the preoccupation, it all clicked into place. This wasn't a last-minute emergency. This was a deliberate, calculated act of cruelty. The tears I'd held back finally broke free, hot and furious. Mark held me, whispering reassurances, his own anger simmering. "They won't get away with this, Sarah," he murmured against my hair. "I promise you." And looking at the smug faces on my phone screen, I knew he was right. They thought they'd delivered the final blow, but they had just started a war they couldn't possibly win. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and thank you notes, the joy of being newlyweds overshadowed by the raw wound of my family's betrayal. I avoided social media, but the damage was done. Friends sent concerned messages, unsure how to react. Mark was my rock. He listened, he raged quietly beside me, and he started making quiet phone calls. He didn't tell me everything, just that he was looking into some things related to David's performance at the plant. I knew Mark had recently taken on a massive new executive role at OmniCorp Manufacturing, the parent company overseeing several plants, including the one David managed. He'd been discreet about the title. "Just a lot more responsibility," he'd said, respecting my desire to keep our lives separate from my family's judgment. But now, that separation felt impossible. "His performance reviews haven't been stellar for a while, Sarah," Mark admitted one evening, his jaw tight. And this deliberate dereliction, leaving his post without proper notice for a family emergency that wasn't one. It reflects poorly on his judgment and integrity. A cold dread mixed with a strange sense of validation washed over me. They had judged me unworthy, yet it was their own integrity that was truly lacking. Mark wasn't just my husband, he was a man of principle, and David had crossed a line, both personally and professionally. It happened 3 days after the wedding, while they were presumably still enjoying their lakeside emergency. Mark sat beside me, speakerphone on, Hedialed David's number. It rang once, twice, then David picked up, his voice sounding relaxed, maybe even a little smug. "Mark? Didn't expect to hear from you, son. Everything all right back home?" Mark's voice was level, dangerously calm. "David, I'm calling about your unauthorized absence this past weekend." David chuckled. "Oh, that? Just a small family matter, unavoidable. Helen wasn't feeling well, needed us." Lie. Another calculated lie. Mark didn't even pause. "Your department missed a critical production deadline on Friday due to your absence, David. A deadline you personally assured me was under control before you left." Silence on David's end. "Furthermore," Mark continued, "claiming a false family emergency to abandon your responsibilities is a serious breach of company policy and ethical conduct." David sputtered. "Now hold on, Mark, it wasn't false. But the real reason I'm calling, David, is about the leadership changes at OmniCorp." Mark let that hang in the air. "As of last Monday, I officially took over as CEO of OmniCorp Manufacturing." Dead silence, not even breathing. "Which means," Mark's voice dropped slightly, colder now, "effective immediately, you are being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation into your performance and conduct. Someone from HR will contact you regarding next steps, including your potential reassignment to the distribution center in Oakhaven." Oakhaven was notoriously the place careers went to die at OmniCorp. "CEO?" David finally whispered, the word cracking. "You're Sarah's Mark? You're the new CEO?" The dawning horror in his voice was palpable. "I am," Mark confirmed. "And Sarah is my wife. The wife whose wedding her family, including a key manager under my leadership, deliberately abandoned." "Reassignment? Oakhaven?" David's voice was thin, reedy. "Mark, listen, there must be a misunderstanding. I've been with this company for 20 years. You can't just— Your tenure doesn't excuse negligence or dishonesty, David." Mark cut him off, his tone leaving no room for argument. "OmniCorp values integrity and family. Ironically, you failed spectacularly on both counts this weekend regarding my wife, your stepdaughter." The stepdaughter mention, quiet but pointed. But the vacation," David stammered, desperation creeping in. "It was planned. Helen booked it. We thought Sarah would understand." "Understand being abandoned and mocked on her wedding day?" Mark countered. "Understand her stepfather prioritizing a leisure trip over both his family commitment and his professional duties." David seemed to finally grasp the full scope of the disaster. "Mark, please, think about Helen, about Paul. Linda, this job is all I have. Oakhaven. It's career suicide." His voice was pleading now, stripped of all its earlier arrogance. The mighty patriarch reduced to begging the man he'd dismissed just days before. Mark was unmoved. "You should have thought about them before you acted, David. Actions have consequences. HR will be in touch." Mark disconnected the call, the silence in our apartment suddenly deafening. He turned to me, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" I nodded slowly, a strange mix of vindication and sadness churning inside. The first domino had fallen. We didn't have to wait long. Within 30 minutes, my phone, which had been chillingly silent from my family, erupted. Paul called first. I let it ring. Linda texted, "Sarah, call me now urgent." Then Mom, "Sarah, pick up the phone right now. David is hysterical. What did Mark do?" Curiosity, sharp and cold, finally made me unlock the family fun getaway group chat I'd muted days ago. The screen instantly flooded with their raw panic. "Paul, Mark is the new CEO at Dad's company? He's reassigning Dad?" Linda, "OMG. No way. Is this because of the wedding? We are so screwed." Helen, "David is having a panic attack. Someone call Sarah. Tell her to fix this. Fix this now." The sheer, unadulterated panic was almost comical. Their carefully constructed world, built on my perceived weakness and their entitlement, was imploding. They hadn't just underestimated Mark, they had fundamentally misunderstood their own precarious position. They weren't calling to apologize. They were calling for me, the convenient daughter, the family ATM, to clean up their mess. Not happening. Not this time. I put my phone on silent, letting the frantic notifications pile up, unseen, unanswered. The power dynamic had shifted, irrevocably. Their vacation was officially over. They cut their trip short, arriving back in Detroit looking haggard and defeated. The calls and texts continued, shifting from panic to pleading, then to blame. "This is your fault, Sarah," Paul texted. "You planned this with Mark." Mom tried. A different tactic. "Honey, we made a mistake, a terrible mistake. Please, just talk to Mark for David. He's falling apart." I ignored them all. 2 days after their return, David showed up at my apartment door, unannounced. He looked smaller somehow, the usual bluster gone, replaced by a desperate edge. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, trying to push past me. I stood my ground, blocking the doorway. "No, David, we don't." His eyes widened. "But your mother, my job, your choices, David," I said, my voice firm, devoid of the old fear. "You made them, live with them." He actually tried to argue, tried the old guilt trips, the reminders of everything he thought he'd done for me, which was mostly providing a roof while criticizing my life. "You owe us," he finally blurted out. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Owe you? After you ditched my wedding? After you stood by while Paul and Linda mocked me? After you tried to undermine my career just because I wouldn't bend to your will? I owe you nothing." His face crumpled, a mask of disbelief and fury. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Maybe," I replied calmly, "but I'll regret letting you walk all over me for one more second, even more." I closed the door gently but firmly in, his face, the click of the lock echoing the finality of it. That was the last time I saw him try to assert power over me. The wall was up. It wasn't built of anger anymore, but of self-respect. Life settled into a new kind of quiet. Mark and I focused on us, building our future together. We moved into a new place, filled with light and our choices. News of my family trickled in, through mutual friends or occasional hesitant emails from Mom. David took the demotion and transfer to Oak Haven. His pride wouldn't let him quit, but the fight seemed to have gone out of him. Paul and Linda struggled. Without the implied safety net of my support and David's influence, their lifestyle took a significant hit. Paul had to get a second job. Mom was trying. She sent birthday cards, on time, small notes asking how I was, never demanding, never assuming. There was a sadness in her messages, a recognition of lost time. I replied politely, maintaining the boundary but acknowledging her effort. The anger had faded, replaced by a weary understanding and a guarded sense of peace. Mark's support was unwavering. He never pushed me to reconcile but celebrated my strength in setting boundaries. His own integrity in handling the situation. Professionally, despite the personal betrayal he felt, made me love him even more. Sometimes, late at night, the phantom sting of their wedding day mockery would surface, a reminder of the scar. It wasn't gone, but it no longer defined me. I was Sarah, the project manager, the wife, the friend, not just the discarded daughter. So that's my story. It's messy, it's painful, but it's mine. It took being pushed to the absolute brink, being literally left behind on my wedding day, to finally see the truth. My worth was never tied to their approval or my ability to provide for them. The twist? The man they dismissed, my husband, held the key to their security, and they threw it away out of sheer arrogance and disrespect. Standing up for myself wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. It meant drawing, Lines that should have been there all along. It meant accepting that the family you're born into isn't always the family that deserves you. Maybe you're listening to this and recognizing pieces of your own story. Maybe you felt undervalued, taken for granted, or betrayed by the very people who should have protected you. Know this: you are not defined by how others treat you. You have the power to set boundaries, to demand respect, and to walk away from situations that diminish your worth. It's terrifying, yes, but the peace you find on the other side is real. What about you? Have you ever had to make a hard choice like this? What happened when you finally put yourself first? Share your stories in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Because hearing these stories, knowing you're not alone, that's part of the healing too. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about finding strength in the toughest times. You deserve to be seen.